major glaciation periods have occurred 4 times in the last 500 million years that we have records of. Some were so severe that major extinctions occurred as a consequence. We are presently in such a period that is extremely severe. The 2 long climate cycles that overlap and determine the strength of our solar system are both approaching their minimal point together. In the last 500,000 years of the resulting glaciation epoch, glaciation conditions occurred for 85% of the time, interspersed with brief interglacial warm periods, like the one we presently enjoy, which we erroneously regard as normal, but which has run its course and is now ending. This means that the current warm period is a climate anomaly that is actually rather fragile. The Ice Age conditions are the normal state on Earth. The difference between the 2 climate states is so enormously large and occurs with such a swift transition between them that it can only be rationally understood as the result of solar on-off transitions. That's what the ice core records indicate. The ice core records from Greenland that were produced from 2 different drilling sites tell us both that even during the deep glaciation period, numerous events occurred that have rapidly warmed the Earth up from deep interglacial cold climates to near interglacial climate conditions. These extremely large and rapid oscillations make perfect sense in the electric world of the primal fields, where they come to light as miniature interglacial events that are caused by the sun becoming periodically active again for short periods, with the primal fields becoming re-established for as long as the conditions hold, which is totally possible in a resonating electric system. At the beginning of the last ice age, the temperature derived from ice core samples in North Greenland dropped off steeply to about the midpoint of the deep glaciation level. This made the Earth about 20 times colder than the Little Ice Age had been. However, the sharp drop-off doesn't show up in ice core samples drilled from the ice in Antarctica, nor do the rapid oscillations show up that span the entire glaciation period, which are clearly evident in the Greenland ice core samples. Does this mean that the rapid oscillations did not occur, or might be local occurrences? It is tempting to assume this, because without the primal fields theory, that makes it rather plain that the sun can rapidly alternate between on and off states. It is almost impossible to explain the large and fast climate oscillations that the Greenland ice core samples tell us of. But with the primal fields theory considered, the enigma resolves into simply a series of events in which the sun is actively powered for a brief span, followed by a longer span of the sun becoming inactive again. The Greenland ice is much more sensitive and able to preserve these fast fluctuations than the ice in Antarctica is. Antarctica being an ice desert, one of the driest spots on Earth, it would be naturally less responsive to short-term variations of the type that we would expect to see when the sun switches from a powered state to its non-powered state, where it shines only dimly with the internally stored up energy for a period of time. The type of rapid fluctuation that would be indicative of on-off transitions of the sun would evidently be more strongly apparent in the ice core samples drilled from the ice sheets in Greenland, which is far from being a desert. The temperature record that is shown here is from the North Greenland project, where the temperature range gleamed from the ice core samples is several times larger than the equivalent in Antarctica. In both cases, the temperature gradient is gleamed from the ratio of the heavy oxygen atom 18 in the air. The ratio is temperature sensitive. Colder temperatures produce a greater concentration of oxygen 18. The baseline concentrations also vary somewhat between the drilling sites, both in Antarctica and in Greenland, but they all show the same pattern. What we see in the Greenland patterns presents strong evidence of the type that one would expect for a solar system's on-off conditions, of which the Antarctic ice shows only the washed-out major trends. The rapid fluctuations that are detected in the Greenland ice are called the glaciation oscillations. These are transitions from deep glaciation conditions almost all the way back to interglacial conditions. These are enormous fluctuations. They tell us that the Earth heated up from full ice age conditions to near interglacial temperatures in 20 to 30 years, and then cooled down again gradually to deep glaciation conditions in a few hundred years. This rapid warming and gradual cooling is evident in all of the big glaciation oscillations. All told, 25 of these big fluctuations have been recognized. In some cases, where the interval is long, where the gradual cooling spans a longer period, we see evidence of small, sharp upward spikes along the way, suggesting that numerous short bursts of the powered state of the sun may have occurred that have caused a period of rewarming on the Earth and also of the sun itself internally. The evidence suggests that the last entire ice age and those before were created by a long series of the power-off state of the sun interspersed with short periods of the sun being fully powered. It appears that whenever the primal fields are established, the sun is actively powered to roughly its full potential, and that both the sun and the earth cool down during the longer powered-off periods. It may seem irrational to assume that such a giant system as that which feeds our sun can turn on and off in the space of a day. However, in electric systems, such rapid transitions are totally natural and are readily observed in the natural environment. When storm clouds reach high into the atmosphere, an electric field becomes established at times, which extends from the stratosphere and causes a plasma flow connection. When this happens, the basic pattern of the primal fields appear in the sky. They flicker on strongly in the shape of the great red sprites and then vanish just as fast. They barely last for more than a second. The primal fields that activate our sun evidently can flicker on and off in a similar rapid manner. What we see in the resulting relationship between the on and off periods for our sun has an enormous impact on what will happen to the agriculture that we depend on the moment that the turn-off happens that marks the start of the next ice age. While we may see a gradual cooling of the climate of the Earth after the sun turns off, the effect of the cooler sun will have an immediate impact on agriculture. Not only will there be radically less energy available for the chlorophyll of the green plants to function, but the radiation spectrum will also shift away from the wavelengths of the visible light that are critical for the absorption by chlorophyll, without which plants cannot grow. When the sun turns off, we will see an immediate 70% reduction of the total energy coming from the sun, and an immediate shift of the energy profile towards the red. We can compensate for this energy loss by placing our agriculture into the tropics, enhanced with artificial lighting, and by placing some parts of it directly into indoor facilities with 100% artificial environments. While the sun becoming inactive poses some challenges, the challenges are not insurmountable. As you can see, both types of chlorophyll get most of their energy from the shorter wavelengths below 500 nanometers, which the sun provides even less of when it dims down. However, since the absorption spectrum of chlorophyll 2 is narrow and specific, only small amounts of energy is required when the lighting is tuned to the absorption band. At the present time, only 2% of the solar energy received is actually utilized by the plant. The entire amount, then, can be provided with relative ease with the use of nuclear or more advanced types of electric power systems. This means that when the sun enters its off state, that is its inactive residual heat state, the remaining sunlight will be essentially useless for most types of agriculture existing today. This means that all the new agricultural platforms that need to be built to maintain our food supply will have to be in place and be operating before the day the sun becomes inactive. This is the new reality. The transformation of the Earth will happen almost instantly, possibly in the span of just a single day or less. When the solar off transition happens, and it will happen, all of the temperate zone agriculture where presently near all of the world's food is produced, will be instantly disabled. The transition won't happen gradually. It will happen instantly. It will happen without warning. And when it happens, the consequences will begin immediately, on the very day. That's what we have to be ready for. That's what we must prepare for. The larger climate transition that unfolds along the way, in which the snows no longer melt but increase, as big as this will be, or as small, will actually be of lesser importance then. The impending Ice Age transition thus forces us to begin the greatest world development ever imagined, and to do this on a gigantic scale, like placing 90% of the world's agriculture afloat on the equatorial seas, all connected by floating bridges, and it being surfaced by a new society living in floating cities along the way. The requirements that we must meet for the future demand us to start a new age of automated industrial production in the present. This means now and without fail, utilizing nuclear-powered high-temperature processes with the use of basalt as the feedstock. Basalt is non-corrosive and is lighter and stronger than steel and is infinitely available. This also means that houses must be produced in automated industries where they are produced at such low cost and effort that they can be given away for free as a part of the new infrastructures for living that must be produced for the human journey to continue during the long nights of deep glaciation. If no preparations are made that compensate for the loss of the traditional food supply that results from the instant transformation of our planet when the sun turns off, then most of humanity will simply starve to death. This isn't something to aim for, is it? For this reason, the floating agriculture will be built, with enhanced lighting, complete with floating cities to service them. These things will happen, because if we fail, the resulting effect will be worse than the effect of a nuclear war. The present global food reserves won't last for no longer than just a few months. It won't be a pleasant thing to watch 7 billion people to starve to death. Only a few million made it through the last glaciation cycle alive. We want to do far better this time around, and we will do better. The primal fields theory opens the door to understanding what we are up against and what we must prepare for. This gives us an advantage that did not exist in the earlier times, but which exists now for the first time in the entire history of life on our planet. Likewise, the technological power exists for this to happen, which makes it possible for the first time to build the infrastructures that we require to weather an ice age with. To get there, our entire civilization will likely have to be rebuilt and set afloat in the tropics where land is scarce. This will happen shifting our agriculture into the tropics, where sunlight is the strongest, will offset the early portion of the loss of the solar energy as the sun is powered off. Some form of minimal artificial lighting will likely have to be added, and artificial climate control will likely have to be added even in the tropics, together with increased CO2 concentrations for increased plant growth. These infrastructures will require some extensive scientific advances in plant biology and in physical engineering technology for the floating new environments. And the whole thing will have to be put in place and the infrastructures be operational without fail before the transition happens. This means that we should get started now. We still have a chance to get this critical work done. We better not waste this chance before us by doing nothing. It may be our last chance. The Ice Age transition will happen without fail. We can count on that. We are close to the transition already. We are close to the transition to the next deep glaciation to begin, though we don't know how close is. We also know that the trend towards the next glaciation has been progressing for 3,000 years already and is accelerating. We don't know exactly where the cutoff level is, beyond which the primal fields collapse and the sun turns off. It may not be far below the level of the Little Ice Age. At the present trend, we may get to this point in 20 or 30 years or 50 years at the most. NASA's Ulysses spacecraft saw a 30% reduction in the solar wind pressure happening in just a single decade. That's not a small drop-off, and the trend is continuing. If our agriculture has not been transferred to the tropics, if our agriculture has not been transferred to the tropics before the high-powered solar system stops, it will be game over for humanity. Humanity will likely become extinct then by the lack of food, except for a minuscule remnant of a few million people that might escape the universal death. If death by starvation is what you wish for yourself and for your children, then sit back and do nothing, because that way your desired fate will be assured with great certainty. The stepping away from this fate begins with the recognition that our sun would not be the brilliant, life-giving fire in the sky without a dense plasma sphere surrounding it, from which it draws its electric power that lights up its photosphere with electric plasma interaction. If this realization is made, half the battle is won, because everything follows and the needed steps become logical. And this realization shouldn't be hard to make. It has been recognized a long time ago that our sun is not the steady-state nuclear fusion furnace which it is widely said to be, but is powered by one of the vast networks of plasma streams that pervade the galaxies and the cosmos as a whole. Since plasma has mass, the plasma surrounding the sun becomes attracted by the sun's gravity and interacts with its outer atmosphere, the photosphere, which thereby becomes excited to 5,780 degrees Kelvin. It is that simple. The primer fields prime the environment in which the simple process unfolds for as long as the fields exist. Once you realize that this presently operating system will vanish in the near future, and that solutions are possible for humanity to move forward in spite of the dimmer sun, you may become inspired thereby to get out of the easy chair, to gain a fuller understanding of how the critical process operates on which your continued existence depends.